Story 1. I am a teacher, and when I was younger, I would take summer jobs to supplement my income. One summer, I worked for a bricklayer named Jerry and heard an amazing story. I worked for Jerry in the mid-90s, so the story either happened in the early 90s or in the 80s. Here goes. The setting for the story was a community of small rural towns which had only one brick contractor. Jerry began his career as a bricklayer working for this contractor, a real jerk. Jerk and Jerk's son, an adult working the business with his father, would harass, belittle, and humiliate all their employees on a regular basis. No work was ever good enough and employees were told they weren't worth what they were paid. Not only did Jerk mistreat his employees, but he was equally rude to other subcontractors and to the general contractors who hired him. Since he was the only bricklayer in the community, there was nothing anyone could do about it. Needless to say, the turnover rate for the brick business was very high. The only person that stuck with Jerk and company was Jerry. Jerry told me that his father had instilled a self-confidence in him that Jerry could do anything he set his mind to do, and that he should not evaluate himself according to what others said, but rather by the facts. Although Jerry was belittled by Jerk and son, as were all other employees, Jerry was becoming a very good bricklayer. Jerry knew he was good. Jerk knew Jerry was good. But Jerk didn't know that Jerry knew he was good. Not only was Jerry a good bricklayer, he was very respectful to the boss who disrespected him. Jerk thought that Jerry was a naive pushover who was buying his head games. That would prove to be a huge mistake on his part. One day, Jerry was doing an exceptionally good job of laying brick. Not only was his craftsmanship amazing, he was laying brick at a high rate of speed so that he was making his boss lots of money. Of course, Jerk and son were belittling his work as though he was doing the very opposite. This scenario was being observed by the general contractor of the project. After work that day, the general contractor asked Jerry to stay behind so he could talk to him. As did every other construction worker in the community, general contractor hated working with Jerk. General contractor told Jerry that he had heard Jerk and son belittling him, and told him that he disagreed with everything Jerk was saying. He asked Jerry if he had ever considered going into business for himself. Jerry said that he would like to do that someday. General contractor then said that he would loan Jerry the money to buy a mixer, the most expensive piece of equipment needed to start a brick business, if Jerry would indeed start said business. The only hitch was that Jerry would need to pay for the mixer whenever he could, and that he would subcontract under general contractor. Jerry agreed to those terms and prepared to begin his new venture. Jerry respectfully told Jerk and son his plans and gave his notice. The two mocked Jerry ruthlessly and laughed at him to scorn. Jerk told Jerry, "You'll be back in 2 months begging to return to your job. You'll never make it as a subcontractor." 2 months later, rather than collapsing as Jerk predicted, Jerry was still in business and going strong. 1 year later, Jerry's business was booming and a drunk Jerk showed up at Jerry's house and begged him to come back to work with Jerk and son. "Jerry, you're the best employee I ever had." Jerry replied, "Why didn't you ever tell me that when I was working for you?" Jerk couldn't answer the question, and Jerry obviously didn't accept the offer for employment. 2 years after beginning his entrepreneurial adventure, Jerry heard that Jerk and son went out of business. Jerry said that he never intended to harm Jerk and son when he accepted general contractor's offer. He said that looking back on things he realized that he had become Jerk's greatest nightmare. I thought the most amazing thing about the story was how Jerry maintained his self-esteem in spite of all the ridicule. I also gained respect for Jerry's father, who instilled an unshakable self-confidence in Jerry. Story 2. Background. There's a theme park a mile or two away from the town where I grew up. Me and 4 of my friends all had these special all-year admission passes that we all saved up our allowances, cash from pawning off old stuff, and gifts from financially generous elderly relatives that we would go pretty much every other weekend. We were 13 at the time, and this was in 2010. It's also worth mentioning that I'm pretty tall for a girl. In fact, I'm 6 foot 3 inches today, and back then was about 5 foot 9 inches or 5 foot 10 inches if memory serves. So mistaking me for an adult was within the realm of possibilities, even for someone who didn't happen to be a complete moron. The employees at this park wore different colored polos and t-shirts depending on where in the park they worked, as well as black or brown pants or shorts, and I was wearing a red t-shirt and brown shorts that day, which I was slightly concerned about at the time, but A. I was barely a teenager, so I wasn't expecting to be mistaken for an employee. B. I really wanted to show off the new t-shirt to my friends. C. If, on the off chance somebody did mistake me for an employee, I could just tell them I was a guest, and they'd understand, right? Right. Wrong. I was so very, hopelessly wrong. So this gaggle of young teen girls spent a whole day riding every ride, playing every game, and being scammed by every rigged arcade machine. After we were done with most rides, we were ready for the biggest, best ride in the park. Every park has that one ride that is the one everyone thinks of and all the advertisements show off. We always saved that ride until after we'd gone on all the others we wanted to go on, and we were finally ready, but one of my friends wanted something to eat. And after we all agreed we were pretty hungry, we decided to get food. I had just gotten some fries and was walking away to meet my friends when someone tapped me on the shoulder, so I turned around. That's when my little minute in hell began. Enter entitled jerk, stage left. Also, paraphrasing alert. Entitled jerk, where are you taking those fries? Me, excuse me, what do you mean? Who ordered those fries? Where are they? These are mine. What are you talking about? Do you think I work here? Well, of course you do. How come whatever lazy jerk who ordered those fries gets them taken right to him, while we all have to wait in line? Mister, I don't work here. These are my fries. Don't mess with me, witch. Here's a little something for the jerk who thinks he's too good to wait in line. And he spat in my fries. It was at this point my friend showed up. She'd been at a stall a few feet away and must have seen me in trouble, and she's twice the woman I am, even back then. Friend, what's going on? I didn't say anything. I was just kind of shocked. The entitled jerk, on the other hand, was more than happy to speak up. Are you the one who can't be bothered to wait for her food like everyone else? Well, kid, your precious fries are ruined, so get in line. My friend looked at my fries, immediately realized what had transpired, and grabbed the guy, who must have had at least 10 inches and 200 pounds on her, by his shirt, then said this to him. Listen here, jerk, you just ruined my friend's fries, and you will pay for more, or else. He snickers, or else what? My friend then proceeded to kick him hard in the shins. Probably a stupid move, but it was nice to see the guy in pain. At this point, a real employee approached. The jerk immediately turned to her. This little brat just kicked me. How come she doesn't have to wait in line? My friend, this guy spat in my friend's fries. After some drawn-out bickering and explanation, the guy caved, gave an apology, and practically sprinted off. I got 2 free portions of fries to make up for it, and after eating them we went on the big ride, and I felt better right away. I'm still good friends with my friend to this day, and we went back to the theme park recently. I wasn't wearing anything similar to the uniform that time, though. Story 3. I've been working retail for about 2 years now, and I thought I'd seen it all. Rude customers, people trying to return things they clearly broke themselves, the whole 9 yards. But nothing prepared me for what happened last Tuesday. Let me give you some context first. I'm 20 years old, and I manage this small retail store with my coworker, who's also 20. It's usually just the two of us handling everything: opening, closing, dealing with inventory, customer service, the works. The pay isn't great, but we make it work. Most days are pretty routine. We get our regulars, help people find what they need, process returns, and go home. Simple. That day started off normal enough. We opened at 9, had a few customers trickle in throughout the morning, nothing unusual. Then around 2 in the afternoon, this guy walked in. He looked to be in his 50s, wearing jeans and a flannel shirt, and he had this angry look on his face before he even said a word. My coworker was at the counter, and she smiled at him like we always do with customers. But instead of greeting her back or asking for help, he just told her to screw off. Just like that. No greeting, no explanation, just straight-up hostility. My coworker's face went pale. She's not great with confrontation, and I could see her hands starting to shake. I walked over immediately and stepped between them. I told him right away that we weren't going to help him if he was going to swear at us like that. He responded by mocking me, asking if I was the language police and if I couldn't handle a little adult conversation. He said it in this mocking, sing-song voice like I was a child. I felt my blood pressure rising, but I kept my cool. I've learned that the best way to deal with people like this is to just stay calm and not give them the reaction they want. I asked him what he needed help with. He explained his problem, something about a product he bought that wasn't working correctly. It was a pretty simple fix, something we could handle in about 2 minutes. I told him the solution, walked him through it, and thought that would be the end of it. He just said fine and turned around without another word. He walked out, and I watched him through the window go to his truck. He opened the back door and leaned in, checking something in the back seat. Then he did it again. And again. He must have checked that back seat 4 or 5 times, looking around nervously each time. It was weird, but I figured maybe he was just paranoid about leaving something valuable in his vehicle. About 15 to 20 minutes passed. My coworker and I were restocking some shelves when the door opened again. It was him. He walked in, didn't say anything, and just sat down in the chair we keep near the entrance for elderly customers who need to rest. And then he just stared at me. Not looking around the store, not on his phone, just staring. Another customer came in, an older woman probably in her 70s. My coworker went to help her while I tried to figure out what this guy's problem was. I asked him if he needed something else. He told me he would tell me when the other customer left. He nodded toward my coworker and the older woman. I told him he could tell me now, but he refused. He said he would leave when she left, meaning the other customer. That's when I knew something was really wrong. This wasn't normal customer behavior anymore. This was threatening. I told him that I had been nothing but pleasant with him the entire time he'd been there, but he had been incredibly hostile. I gave him 2 options. He could either talk to me right then so I could try to help him, or he could leave, because at that point what he was doing, just sitting there and saying nothing, was loitering. I could see his jaw clench. He stood up fast, his chair scraping against the floor. He walked right up to me, getting in my personal space, so close I could smell cigarette smoke on his breath. He was a good 6 inches taller than me, and he was using that height to try to intimidate me. He gave me this look, this intense stare like he was trying to make me back down. I didn't move. I just stared right back at him and asked him what it was going to be. For a few seconds, neither of us blinked. My heart was pounding, but I wasn't going to let him see that I was scared. Finally, he looked away and said he would leave. He turned and walked out the door. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. But then I looked out the window, and he wasn't leaving. He got in his truck, but he just sat there in the driver's seat, staring at us through the window. And he kept turning around to check his back seat again, over and over. I told my coworker that he was still out there. She came over and looked, then said it was really creepy. The older customer had noticed too. She walked over to us and told us we needed to call the police right away. She said that man was not right in the head. I hesitated, saying I wasn't sure if we needed to, but she was insistent. She told me she was serious and that we needed to call them because this wasn't normal behavior. She was right. I picked up the phone and called the non-emergency line, explained the situation. They said they'd send someone over. It took about 10 minutes for the police to arrive. 2 officers pulled up, and they waved at me through the window before going to talk to the guy. I watched them approach his truck. They talked to him for maybe 5 minutes, and then things got wild. the guy started yelling. I couldn't hear what he was saying, but I could see him getting more and more agitated. Then he tried to shove one of the officers. Big mistake. Within seconds, both cops had him in handcuffs. They searched his truck, and I saw them pull something out of the back seat, but I couldn't tell what it was from where I was standing. After they put the guy in the back of their patrol car, one of the officers came inside. He told me that the guy was going to jail that night because there was something in the back seat of his truck that he was going to jail for. He said the guy was a wanted man. Then he asked if we were okay and if we felt safe, offering to have one of them stay if we didn't. I thanked him and told him we were fine. He said he needed me to write up a witness report about what happened inside the store. I wrote down everything, the swearing, the staring, the threatening behavior, all of it. The officer thanked me and left. My coworker and I just looked at each other. She asked what I thought was in his truck, and I told her I had no idea, but I was glad we didn't have to find out. The older customer was still there. She came up to the counter and told me I had handled that very well. She said I should trust my instincts and that if something feels wrong, it usually is. She bought her items and left. The rest of the day was quiet, but I couldn't stop thinking about what might have been in that back seat that he kept checking. Why he was wanted. What could have happened if I hadn't called the cops when I did? I still don't have answers. Story 4. Okay, so slightly misleading title, since I'm English and we don't technically have mall cops, just regular security guards. In a former life, a few years ago now, I was a police officer here in good old England. I had moved from a team dealing with emergency calls, racing around in old Ford Focus cars, and handling all sorts of urgent situations to a team that supported a large shopping complex. The job mostly involved handling shoplifting cases, antisocial behavior, and other thrilling matters like that. The uniform consisted of a white shirt, black tie, and, when out and about, a stab vest over the top, along with one of those big pointy hats. When I went on break, I'd usually throw on a normal jacket to cover my shoulder numbers for personal security reasons. To a casual observer, I just looked like an ordinary guy in a white shirt and black tie. Cue the moment. I just finished the paperwork from a shoplifting case and started craving a sandwich. I locked away my vest and hat, but kept my belt on, which held the essentials: can of spray, handcuffs, and metal baton. This is England, after all. I threw on a plain black jacket and ventured into the shopping complex in search of a foot-long sandwich. Once I got to a well-known sandwich outlet, I ordered my meal, paid, and found a seat to enjoy it in peace. I had barely been eating for 5 minutes when I noticed a woman at the counter making a scene. From her exaggerated arm movements, I could tell she wasn't happy. That wasn't a crime, so I focused back on my sandwich until the voices grew louder and a hand slammed onto the counter. I sighed, tossed the remains of my sandwich in the bin, and walked over to see what was going on. Since I was a familiar face in the shopping center and a regular at that particular sandwich shop, the staff recognized me. They relaxed as I approached, which only seemed to annoy the woman even more. It turned out they didn't have the sandwich filling she wanted, and she was refusing to take no for an answer. Me, is everything all right here? The woman turned and looked me up and down. I was in my early 20s then, and she must have mistaken me for a security guard. Karen, I don't need security. This little jerk won't make my sandwich. Me. All right, first of all, please stop using that kind of language. Second, I'm actually a level above security. She clearly didn't appreciate that. Karen, oh, go away. I just want my sandwich. She ignored me and went back to banging her hand on the counter, waving at the poor teenager behind it. Me, you need to stop that. She spun back around to face me. Karen, I said go away. I know the management here, so get lost and go back to standing around outside the department store, or I'll get you fired. Me, I don't care who you know. I'm warning you now, you need to stop using that language. It's considered a public order offense. Karen, Or what? I just want my sandwich, not some overconfident pretend policeman interfering. Leave me alone. Me? Stop swearing, stop making a scene, and stop hitting the counter or you'll be arrested. Karen, don't tell me what to do. You're just a wannabe officer. You can't arrest me. Get me your boss right now. With every word, she slammed her palms harder against the sneeze guard. By that point, I figured I'd been patient enough. I slowly unzipped my jacket, revealing my police uniform underneath. Her eyes widened the second she saw the handcuffs on my belt. Me? Nope. I'm arresting you under Section 5 of the Public Order Act. The arrest is necessary to prevent injury to others and damage to property. You don't have to say anything, but it may harm your defense if you fail to mention something now that you later rely on in court. I didn't actually plan on cuffing her, there was no need. I was twice her size, and she wasn't physically resisting. Instead, I gently guided her to a nearby table and had her sit down while I called for a patrol car. About 30 minutes later, after she'd spent the entire time insisting she'd done nothing wrong, I issued her a penalty notice to resolve the matter. In the end, her outburst over a sandwich earned her an arrest and an 80-pound fine instead. Story 5. Signed the lease on my current apartment on December 27, 2017. The start date on the lease was the 28th. I did the walkthrough and notated every single thing. Scuff marks, sloppy paint jobs, dozens of nail holes, dinged corners, cracked linoleum tiles, stains, spray paint on the doorknobs and microwave, etc., etc., etc. Clearly a classy place. Anyway, I turned in the page they gave me and another 2 pages of notes, listing every single tiny thing that I could find that wasn't perfect. That should have clued them in to the kind of person that I am, but I guess not. Before the final signing on the 27th, I talked with the apt manager and asked if I could start bringing stuff in, but not actually take possession until the 1st, since they still needed a day or two to shampoo the carpets and repaint some spots. She said yes, of course, no problem. But the date on the lease was still December 28, 2017. I bring over boxes on the 28th, plug in the fridge to get it cold for when I bring over foodstuffs on the 1st, bring over more boxes and call it a day. The 29th, I bring more stuff and check the fridge and notice the fridge is kinda cool and the freezer is room temp. Not cold at all, let alone freezing. I catch the office lady just before they close that day on Friday, the 29th. Explain the fridge seems to be broken. It's a provided appliance, specifically listed in the lease, along with a stove and dishwasher. She says no problem, tasks a maintenance guy to check on it with me. He takes 2 minutes to say, it's broken. I'm like, yep, that's why you're here. So, how do we fix it? I'm moving in on the 1st. Oh, okay, that's okay. I'll just get a good one from an empty apartment and switch them out. Great. I leave to get more boxes. I'm moving what I can with my car while also working full-time, planning to borrow my dad's truck on the 31st to bring over my bed, foodstuffs, and other large furniture. 30th rolls around. Still no fridge. Call office, no answer because it's Saturday. 31st, Sunday and New Year's Eve. I bring the rest of my stuff, put food in the kinda cool fridge, hoping it won't spoil. I called the office again, no answer. January 1st. Monday, surely now I can get some help. Haha, no. On New Year's Day, the office is closed of course. I still drop off rent in the rent box. January 2nd, Tuesday. And office is still closed because no one likes to work with a hangover, I guess. Most food now is either definitely off or at the very least untrustworthy. I tossed about $80 worth of food, but not before taking a photo of it all. I'm officially pissed off now. Wednesday morning, the 3rd, I'm at the office at 7:55 am, just as the apartment manager rolls up to open up for the day. She still looks hungover. Must have been one hell of a New Year's. Meanwhile, I haven't had a working fridge for 3 days, that I'm counting, and had to toss a lot of food. I'm not happy, to say the least. Still, I politely but tersely told her what was going on. Showed her the picture of lost victuals, and was promised I'd have a fridge that day. I go to work. I get home at 11 p.m., still no freaking fridge. I do some Googling, and it takes a while because the information was not readily available, but I finally find the owner's contact info. I call around 1 a.m., leave a detailed and noticeably upset voicemail, and go to bed. I wake up, go to work, come home that night, and finally the fridge fairy has blessed me with a visit, and I find a working goddamn cold box in my kitchen. It's in the middle of the kitchen floor at a weird angle, instead of in the spot made for it, but whatever. I'm happy the whole freaking thing is over, and I can focus on unpacking. That was January 4th, 2018. Needless to say, not a good first impression of the place. Sorry for the long exposition. Now on to the revenge. 2 weeks go by, and I come home to a note on the door saying I owed X dollars in back rent. Back rent? I haven't even been here a whole month yet. I go to the office to see what's up and get told that I didn't pay for the first 4 days of my lease, and that I had to pay that by the end of the month or face a fine. Tried to remind them that the apartment manager said I could take possession on the 1st since they still had to carpet clean and stuff, and was politely told to get lost because the lease says December 28th. Yeah, and also screw you. Well, that's what I heard anyway. But okay, I see now. You want me to abide by the lease? Fine. I will. But so will you. I get a money order for the amount and return half an hour later and slam it on the counter. The apartment manager is there too, kinda avoids my eyes, takes the money order, and starts to walk back to her office. By the way, I'll be deducting 8 days of rent from February's payment. Just a heads up. Cue surprised double take. What? Why? You can't just not pay the full amount of rent. You'll be fined. Then I pulled out my phone, already loaded to the applicable section of our state's tenant-landlord laws, and read off the part that basically says, if an amenity or appliance provided by the property owner, or a guaranteed utility such as water or heat, is listed in the lease as being the sole responsibility of the owner, and if that amenity, appliance, or utility is unavailable to the tenant for any number of days during their lease with the owner, then the tenant may subtract that many days' worth of rent from the next month's rent or receive a refund of same if it is the last month of their lease. Confused silence. I explain. That means that, as you say, my lease started on the 28th. That means I didn't have a working fridge for the first 8 days of my lease. That is double the amount that I just paid you for my back rent. Therefore, come February, I am going to legally and rightfully withhold 8 days of rent because you couldn't honor our lease agreement and get me a working fridge the day I asked for it. Then she kinda shook herself, asked me please wait 1 moment while she made a phone call. I sit down and pull up Reddit. 10 minutes later, she comes out with my money order and asks me to take it back. This was all just a misunderstanding, and let's just forget about all of this. Big smiles, hide the panic, hide the panic. I returned her smile and told her, I can't do that. That money order is already addressed to the apartment complex. I can't cash or deposit it. And besides, you guys were the ones that said I had to abide by our lease agreement. I just did, and now you will, too. Cue cool guy exit, double finger guns, and dozens of cheering onlookers. Pew pew pew. Ha, no, I just got my stuff and said, welp, guess I'll see ya on the 1st. Have a good one. And I left. February 1st rolls around, and I drop off my money order for rent 8 days, along with a reminder note of why that is, and I didn't hear a single freaking word about it. Bonus story, about 6 months in, my toilet starts a micro leak, hairline crack on the inside of the tank, starts staining the linoleum, and rather than drag it out and get the runaround like last time, I write up a note that basically says, pursuant to Code 1, 42.69, blah blah blah, if the owner does not complete required repairs within 2 weeks of written notification, tenant may complete those repairs and deduct all related expenses from the next month's rent. Taken the note and present it to the main front desk girl. When asked why I went to all that trouble when all I had to do was submit a maintenance request, I reminded her about the fridge fiasco, Her eyes go wide, and I get told, not to worry, they are on it. 3 hours later, I had a new toilet. If you're a renter, look up your tenant laws. They are there to protect you. Story 6. I've been a retail manager for a drugstore chain for over a decade. I've had a wide spectrum of employees, but this employee, we'll call him Ken, was the worst of them all. At the end of the night, the employees share responsibilities on cleaning, sweeping, and organizing the store. Ken constantly gave a response that he didn't sign up to be a janitor. He refused to do anything else beyond cashiering, and there were times he lacked in that as well. Ken was constantly calling off and ditching work. After we gave him a written warning and him not showing up became excessive, we cut his hours. When he continued to ditch his work, his hours were cut to the bare minimum. Shortly after, Ken started to whine for a raise, specifically an increase of $10 per hour. Me, being a shift manager, I do not make $10 more per hour than Ken. He started to complain that he wasn't paid enough, so he couldn't pay his rent, adding on that we would all have to answer for it. I reminded him that the company was paying commission on a luxury skin care line, $5 commission per product. Sell to an hour, you got your $10 raise. He whined that it was too much work. A customer who was the manager of a movie theater offered him a part-time job. He was fired a week later for bad attendance. 2 no-shows and 3 tardies. I told him that the local car dealership was hiring. They were paying the same we paid per hour plus commission. Ken scoffed and said that he didn't want a sales job. I told him that the local Red Lobster was hiring. Ken scoffed and said serving was too much work. Ken constantly complained that we only criticized him and never praised him. I told him praise is earned, not given. I believe somewhere in Ken's mind, he was doing a great job and was irreplaceable. Quite often Ken said he was going to play in the NFL and be extremely wealthy someday. He also said that his parents kicked him out of their house and made him get a job, ruining his dreams. At this time, I had several employees who had just graduated high school, this being their first job. Ken was 28 years old, only a year younger than me. This is the type of behavior I was expecting from my teen employees, not someone in his late 20s. I think it's safe to say Ken wanted to get paid a lot for doing nothing and didn't realize he's an adult. So one day another manager and I had to bring Ken back into the office to talk to him about his whining and an incident. Ken tried to get out of us if he was going to get fired. We told him the store manager was going to decide. When we wouldn't give a straight answer, Ken said he quit and left his name badge behind. He continued walking out the door, scoffing, saying how this place sucks. He's out of here for good, and that we were going to be sorry. That manager and I both wrote affidavits saying what happened. I had all the other on-duty employees write affidavits describing what Ken said. Ken came back the next day to collect his paycheck. He left saying we would all pay for what we did to him, and that we'd all be sorry. I think in Ken's mind he thought he was a star employee. A few weeks later, we got notification that Ken had filed for unemployment. Thanks to all our affidavits and some video footage, it was proof enough that Ken quit on his own accord, meaning no unemployment. Some of you might be asking why Ken had not been fired early on. Ken was black and kept screaming discrimination and racism at management. There was another black worker, great employee. HR had been notified of his claim. Under HR's advice, to prevent discrimination lawsuits, document more bad acts and poor workmanship. So far we have received no lawsuits from Ken, and I believe his statute of limitations has expired.